So, who knows where Dr. King was when he was assassinated?
Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, what was he doing?
Supporting garbage workers.
Right. And why was he supporting them?
They were black, and they were fighting for social justice.
That's right, they were fighting for justice, but what had happened to them? 2 men got killed, right? They were taking shelter during a thunderstorm, and they got crushed, right? So, my son is trying to do my best to shake me, but... So, more than 40,000 workers are killed every year in the United States in workplace accidents, and almost at least as many are injured or have life-threatening injuries following that. The need for having safe workplaces affects lower-wage workers much more so the further up the line you get. So if you work in an office, or if you work in, I don't know, a place where it's relatively safe, a lot of times people fought for that safety. But when you look around you and you look at the grass and the people who are pruning the trees and people who are actually collecting the garbage, those folks a lot of times are literally putting their lives on the line in a way that's really daily and they don't always notice. Representation for those workers is one of the most important things that's available to us, but also something that's been denied and fought for public sector workers for a very, very long time. And right now, we're under threat one more time. Public sector workers are literally the people who keep our streets clean, educating our children, put out our fires. They're the ones that we actually depend on. That's our point of contact with the world a lot of times. Our first point of contact is often with the public sector worker. Literally the backbone of the labor movement right now, we have a Supreme Court case that is going to put them at jeopardy called Janus. Has anyone heard of this? Yeah. So the workers in Memphis were fighting for recognition as well as for safety. They were fighting to make sure that their contracts were honored and their position was being honored in the world. And so we remember those signs that said, "I am a man," right? We think of this in the inclusive sense, that when they were fighting for that, they were fighting for the recognition of their full humanity. And I'd like to introduce Brother John Byrne, who is the staff representative of AFSCME, with Council 94 of Rhode Island, who not only was a sanitation worker at one point, but has been actively representing public sector workers and is defending on the line, fighting for their rights every single day. And he's doing that with all of you in mind. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Brother John. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. My name is John Burns. I serve as a staff representative for Rhode Island Council 94. Over 30 years ago, I started my career as a member of AFSCME, working as a sanitation worker in the city of Central Falls. AFSCME is a union whose history is tied closely to Dr. King, so it's a true pleasure that I'm here to be here today to honor his memory. In Memphis, Tennessee, a group of sanitation workers, members of AFSCME Local 1733, had a long struggle to gain recognition from the city to improve their working conditions, their pay, and their lives. These were people who worked every single day but still couldn't raise themselves out of poverty. Their only hope, and the hope for millions of other families to this day, was to join the union and to gain a voice. On February 1st, 1968, a first thunderstorm forced sanitation workers Ian Cole and Robert Worko to seek shelter in the back of their garbage truck. The storm was so bad that the white sanitation workers have been allowed to go home while the black sanitation workers were forced to stay and finish their routes. Imagine how bad conditions must have been for men to seek shelter in the packer bed of their garbage truck. Among the sanitation workers' grievances that had been ignored were warnings about faulty, outdated equipment on their trucks. Those warnings proved tragically that the day when the trucks compacted kicked on, crushing Cole and Walker to death. The coal workers decided they had enough. They voted to strike, with 1,300 men, mostly African American, marching in the streets, braving tear gas and nightsticks under a simple but powerful slogan, "I am a man." Organizers enlisted the help of hundreds of religious leaders, eventually persuading many influential factions within the city to support the workers. Dr. Martin Luther King traveled to Memphis, joining the strikers because he viewed the strike as a reflection of the same values he was fighting for in the Poor People's Campaign. He believed that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He believed that the needs of African Americans were identical with labor's needs: decent wages, fair working conditions, livable housing, old age security, health and welfare measures, conditions in which families can grow, have education for their children, and respect in the community. Memphis would be Dr. King's last campaign. Less than 24 hours after delivering his famous mountaintop speech at the Mason Temple, he was struck down by an assassin's bullet. A few weeks later, the strike ended with the city accepting most of the sanitation workers' demands. While he made many strides forward as a nation in the 50 years since Dr. King was assassinated, it feels like many of those gains are being rolled back. From our jobs being outsourced and workers losing their pensions and health insurance to immigrants being detained without bond hearings, we are losing many of the things that Dr. King fought for and died. The Supreme Court is set to make a terrible ruling against unions in a case called Janus versus AFSCME. It is a case designed to cripple labor unions, to take away the right of working people to come together and have a strong voice on the job, to level the playing field, at least a little bit. The case is not just Janus versus AFSCME, it's Janus versus all of us. The Supreme Court is looking at overturning 40 years of established labor law, 40 years of precedent that the Supreme Court set with a unanimous ruling in 1977. Now, if this was just a legal case, we would win. But the Supreme Court is a political court. And make no mistake, we are going to lose. It is fitting that we gather here today on the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's death while he was standing up for working people. If we leave here today and simply go home and do nothing, we are not honoring him. We need to honor Dr. King's memory by agitating in our communities, our schools, our workplaces, our houses of worship, at the State House and in the streets. Like the teachers in West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Kentucky, like the students in Florida, we need to fight back. The courts may rule against us, but that won't kill us. The only thing that will kill us is sitting on our butts and doing nothing. Brothers and sisters, let's honor Dr. King the way he wanted us to by agitating and organizing. At AFSCME, we are saying we never quit. When we fight, we win. Thank you.
When we fight? When we fight? When we fight? That's right.